Welcome to the Legion Outriders podcast, your source for the latest Legion news, opinion, and analysis. And now, the Outriders.
How's it going, Outriders? Matt and Dan back here with you today on another fantastic episode of the Legion Outriders. Dan, how you doing?
Doing great, sir.
Well, fantastic. We've got the second part of the kind of the versus printer showdown. We talked about resin printers last week, and then this week it's the what is it?
We're going to talk about the FDM printers.
FDM
With two very special guests.
Oh, and we do have some very special guests. Yes. Keegan and Drake will be joining us from Six Up Industries. Supply. I want to say Industries. I don't know. It's maybe it's a Satisfactory thing holding over. Everything's industry there. Are you still playing Satisfactory?
A bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
You've been spending a lot of time on Star Wars Squadrons, haven't you?
Oh, yes. So rolling right into the Star Wars news.
Hey, Star Wars news!
Hey, guess what released? Squadrons.
Yeah,
Star Squadrons.
it sure did.
I know. You played a little bit on stream.
I streamed it a little bit. Yeah. It was. It's been fun. Asterix.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not quite hitting the buttons with me that I was hoping it would.
Really? Okay. I mean, I know it's you described it as such. You said it was a little more MOBA-ish.
Yeah, it is. It's actually definitely reminding me of games like Dota or League of Legends, where you've got your creeps, so you got like unnamed TIE fighters and X-Wings going back and forth, and then CR-90s and Raiders and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the enemy base you're trying to blow up. And then there's like 80% of a like legit flight sim going on too.
Yeah, and well, I don't do as many space flight sims as you do. I know you do a lot of the Star Citizen and
Elite Dangerous, those kind of things.
But yeah, no, I've been having a lot of fun with it. Of course, I probably have to justify the fun I'm doing with it because I put down $300 for a Logitech.
You got a really nice, well, I guess it's mid-range.
It's mid-range, yeah.
I think it's pretty good. I was actually really looking. It's the X56.
Yeah, the Logitech X56, which has been a pain in the butt to actually locate one. I didn't tell you where I actually found it.
Where'd you find it?
A legit pilot supply store. It was
shut up, really?
Yeah.
They're just selling Microsoft Flight Sim and then X56s.
They sell things like headsets and microphones and bags and clipboards for actual pilots.
Did they have like the big wavy scarves from like the biplane days of yore?
And they had a section on their website of quote unquote training materials. So they sold, Microsoft Flight Simulator, but a lot of control yokes and pedals and everything, and they had it in stock.
Wow!
Considering how trying to find sticks in stock right now is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I never would have thought to do that. But that's fantastic. But it is fun, and it just seems like you really, because it's a very PvP focused game. The campaign is. I'm actually plugging through that right now, but in order to get good enough where I'd feel good about spending time, I don't feel like. I don't know. We'll see how the community is and. 4 to 5 months from now. Yeah. I'm curious if there'll still be games going on.
But any of you out there playing it and have just hopped into the multiplayer, do play the campaign because they do a lot of the quote-unquote like teaching you how to do a lot of things like boosting and drifting are actually sections in the campaign where they go and go down and teach you actually how to do that properly.
This is Squadrons, not Fast and Furious, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. But that's going on. What else do we have?
Well, in interesting merch, and there hasn't been a lot of merch lately, but the funniest thing I found.
Some of the Black Spire Outpost stuff that came out like a month or two ago. But not a lot else.
Nothing lately. But lately announced Polaroid. You remember Polaroid?
I grew up in the 80s, so yes, I do. As a matter of fact,
is releasing a Mandalorian-themed instant film camera.
So a Polaroid?
Yeah, so they're literally remaking the camera from the 80s. The one with it spits the photo out the front.
And then people shake it like a Polaroid picture, even though you're not supposed to?
Yes, you're not supposed to shake it.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah, don't shake it. Not like a salt shaker either.
So Polaroid is releasing a Mandalorian-themed. I guess Mando's going to come in every episode.
What?
Yes, it's like silver colored, just like the Mandalorian armor.
He's a bounty hunter. Is he like doing proof of life photos for ransom? I don't understand what the Mandalorian has to do with.
And on top of that, the film, which is accompanying it, the branded film, the photos, the actual frame of it is going to be Mandalorian themed. So there'll be like little baby Yoda and the helmet icons and the Mudhorn icons on the frame of the photo.
You can't see my face right now, but it's incredulous. I buy stupid stuff. Like that is a defining feature of my life as a Star Wars fan adult. what is the audience for this? Where did their market research hone in?
Their market research was watching Spaceballs and going, merchandising.
It's like, hey, those are the guys that have $120 too much.
Yes, so yours available now. It's not on pre-order. It is available now. $120 for the basic camera, or they have a kit for like $180, I believe. So.
Wow, I guess there must be some sort of resurgence in like scrapbooking communities or something. Just having a very nice camera in my pocket at all times on my phone isn't good enough, apparently.
Well, Star Wars fans our age are trying to relive our childhoods.
They should they should have a Mandalorian themed ice cream maker that we can run through Cloud City with.
Yes.
That would be fantastic. Any actual news?
So on the kind of the corporate front of things, remember D23, which is Disney's kind of, I hate to call it convention. It's more of like an investor meeting kind of thing.
Expo.
Hey, this is what we're doing. Please buy our stock.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 2021 D23, which was because there was going to be no celebration in 2021. Right. We all thought anything would be released at D23 2021. Well, that got postponed to September 9th to 11th of 2022.
Huh.
And the weird thing with that is the next celebration, which was going to be August 2022, has no announcements on its date changing. So as of right now, no conventions or announcements or expos in 2022 or 2021. In 2022, we're literally going to have, within weeks of each other, Celebration Anaheim, and then like literally 3 weeks later will be D23. So they're either going to have a lot of announcements, or they're really going to be spread thin across the two.
That'll be interesting.
Expos,
I wonder if it's just because, hey, we're going to just leave all the rooms configured and go put up some different banners or something. Like it's just a logistics. Yeah, we'll just make it easy on ourselves this year. I've still got my tickets to Celebration, so that maybe I'll just hide in a bathroom until D23 rolls around.
And they're like,
is it time? Wow. Okay. I'm hoping that doesn't signify that they're going to be moving Celebration again.
Yeah, I hope not, because we've already lost a year, and then we would have had to wait.
Everybody's lost a year.
Yeah, it's crazy. LVO update.
Oh, is that still going on?
Yeah, 112 days.
Hey, to LVO. Okay, man.
I know. And our next episode, we're going to be sub 100. And like I said in previous episodes, I'm probably going to start panicking.
Your blood pressure is just steadily spiking as we go on.
I did pop up Tinkercad a bit and tweaked a few more models. I haven't done any real serious work, but I'm trying to force myself back into it, because I still also have 15 Imperial Special Forces, 3 squads, on my paint desk too, awaiting their paint jobs. They've been primed, but I haven't been doing much work on the on the Special Forces. The generic squads. But yeah, other than that,
some Legion news I see.
Not a whole lot going out.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. The only new article we've gotten since last episode was a build guide for the ATRT. So those of you,
so the guy goes on top in the
Oh, okay. The legs
cool.
go on the bottom.
Couldn't be confused.
The knee bone's connected to the shin bone, and the
you got to sing the little song. Is it just the lyrics of the song as you
basically
go
yes.
Okay.
So for anyone confused on how to build anyone confused on how to build their ATRTs, and when you open up and you find the paper and they're saying, for the build guide, go to this web address. Well, the build guide is actually there now.
Hey, oh wow! Actually, they had the inserts, but it wasn't ready yet.
Yes,
that's funny.
It actually says the same thing on the Staps, and there's no Stap build guide yet. So.
Whoopsie doodle. And for the next thing, I think it went out as a cry of a million voices that were suddenly silenced, or at least one voice.
Yes,
from the past.
So this is going into rumor territory.
Rumors.
So everyone take your sodium intake right now. So a distributor website from Europe posted 2 potential releases. Now, this isn't a website that's leaked anything in the past, at least not in my research.
They're just trying to get famous.
Yeah, sure. But apparently there's a leak that our next 2 releases, which, of course, back in, what was it, Gen Con? God, what was that last?
Yeah,
that last virtual
years ago.
Where Alex Davies said the next releases after the specialist packs would be
Empire,
or Rebel, and there'll be 4 of them, and supposedly one of them was never requested. Supposedly 2 of those items, which is the commanders for those, have been leaked. and supposedly Lando.
Yay!
And I'm hoping they do Donald Glover Lando, but we'll get more into that. And
I want 2 different heads.
Yes.
With many different cape options.
Oh, yes. There better be a whole sprue of capes for Lando on there.
Yeah.
But the cry from the cosmos here, supposedly Agent Callus is coming. So yeah, no, when that first thing that came out, I screenshotted it. I sent it over to Josh.
Oh, Josh.
Yes, Josh, we miss you. I don't know if he listens anymore.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
But yes, he responded with multiple expletives of yet bleep yes.
Yeah. Wow, maybe that'll get him to come back and play.
Yeah.
Unlikely, but maybe. Yeah.
So yeah, but on the Callus side of things, I'm curious how they're going to mold, because that his helmet is kind of the Roman style, but it's very open, so you can still see his entire face in it. And of course, it has to be an unhelmeted with mutton chops.
Is it going to come with a flip like Rebel Empire side? Do you think? No, this is going to be.
I get enough crap about that from with Iden.
Yeah, fair enough. That's true. Hey,
enough traitors.
Yeah, that's right. You've got all the traitors over there. Maybe it's because you're the bad guys.
Are we the baddies?
Are you the baddies, Hans? But
So,
well, we'll see. I guess if we get any confirmation that here, we'll definitely talk about that. Maybe we can have Josh jump by and talk about mutton chops, how they're his favorite facial feature for Agent Callus and all that. But cool. That's about it. We're going to jump right into the second segment because it is an extra jumbo sized one. And we want to keep try to keep that 1 hour tagline going. But we'll be right back with Drake and Keegan from 6 Up Supply.
You are receiving the Legion Outriders podcast. Ending the transmission now would be most unfortunate. And now, the Outriders.
Welcome back, Outriders, and we are continuing our coverage of different types of printing. We did a lot of resin with Zach talking about his experiences and some of the things we did. This week, we've got some special guest stars that we're bringing out. Is it another special episode, Dan?
It's always a special episode.
It's always a special episode. That's right. But we've got Keegan and Drake, BFFs. They've been elevated to BFFs of the show, if they weren't already, from 6 Up Industries. Industries? Manufacturing? What?
Supply.
Supply. There we go. 6 Up Supply. That are going to be talking about some of their experiences because they've actually got a company that does this kind of stuff. How's it going, gentlemen?
Great. Thank you guys for having us. It's
thanks
always
a
fun to
bunch.
talk to you guys. This is a new elevation. I used to count how many times I could get name dropped on the various Legion podcasts, and you guys are the first to break me onto the air. So.
Well, you broke my spirits early on, so basically you owe me. You owned me with your defeat of me at LVO with the
right.
T-47. So
Ouch.
let's not forget.
Yeah, so it was the defeat that solidified a friendship. So
Yes.
He beat you with the T-47?
Oh yeah.
I didn't hear this story.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
Oh,
I haven't.
Man.
Anyway.
Okay.
Either
Well,
hear about
over that
it
later.
or Keegan actually wears a T-shirt that commemorates that particular defeat. So I've heard about it, and I wasn't even there.
it's just like a me emoji with a cry face on. So,
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. To be fair, and I don't know if this makes it better or worse for Matt, but it was my only win of that event.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's worse. That's way worse.
I'm pretty sure that's worse.
Yeah, that's gosh. Okay, well, Dan, take it away.
So, wow, how do I go from there?
Printing, gentlemen.
Anywhere for
printing,
yeah,
yes.
right.
FDM printing.
So what is FDM?
I actually had to Google this because I'm sure.
Well, let's put these guys on the spot. What's FDM?
I honestly can't remember. It's something depositional, something or other. I don't know.
Yes.
What is it? What is FDM? I just call it not resin printing.
Yeah, I'm sure most people that print probably actually don't know what the acronym means.
Frankfurt dance music.
Well, you said
Yes.
you said funky dance moves last episode.
That's. Okay,
but no,
that's
it
what
is fused deposition modeling.
Objection.
Yes.
So, I know, very boring name for it, but we'll just
Wow.
call it plastic printing.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah,
makes more sense.
exactly. The smoke machine in the garage. I think the industry is starting to try and call it additive manufacturing to make it seem less hobbyish.
Like ham radio.
Yeah, right, exactly. Don't judge me on that.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
no, yeah,
Oh,
that's a
okay.
different podcast, man. The yeah, no, I call it the one that squirts the plastic. That's how my daughter knows it. So
I wouldn't Google that. But anyways, so I'm assuming before you guys got into business that this started out as a hobby. Keegan, did you come in doing some of the stuff, or are you just like, oh no, I want to put the business side together, and Drake's the expertise man? How did that relationship form?
Yeah, great question. Well, the relationship formed because Drake and his family moved in across the street from us.
Okay, so a marriage of convenience.
It was very, very much that. But yeah, I got into Legion. Legion's the first tabletop war game I've ever played, and I resisted those kind of games because I figured the hobby stuff was just a nerd vista too far for me. But so that Star Wars license will do it for me. So I got in. I found out that as opposed to hating it, I actually really loved the painting part almost the most, and then very quickly turned towards figuring out how to make my own terrain and enjoying that piece. At some point, I got tired of buying all printed terrain at obvious markup prices. But I bought a very, very cheap, very off-brand 3D printer on Amazon. I think I had a total of one marginally successful print off of it, and I realized that this is just not my jam to get down into the details. But
it was the printer's jam.
It was absolutely, yes. It was absolutely that. Yeah, so much.
I'm a dad, and that left a taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah, through talking to Drake as we got to know each other, he was definitely into this kind of stuff, and I was like, you know what? If you want to start looking at 3D printers, you can just have the one in my garage because it's literally collecting dust.
Oh wow!
And so he took a look at that, tinkered with it for. Well, he pretended it was a week. He probably made up his mind after 30 minutes. And offered.
I had it apart and was like, this is well. Actually, the thing that got me was, and I don't even remember. I think it was an XYZ something or other, but it sort of it had all the flavors of, like a piece of technology where it's clear that no one is supporting it anymore, and even beyond that, there's no community around it, and so like, drivers that hadn't been updated in a long time. Just all kinds of badness. And also, I was a novice at that point, so something that had literally no support structure around it was utterly terrifying. That, and it was not in a good state when it came to me. So I was like, okay, I think this one's DOA, man. But interesting. We convinced each other that it was totally not a waste of money to go in halvesies on something else. And our shop's first FDM printer was born. So that's from my end. I mean, Star Wars fan, obviously, but I have always had a penchant for kind of constantly working and tinkering on something or other. And for years and years, I'd wanted to learn 3D modeling. And just to sort of have it, and be able to do stuff with it. And I had sort of very, very modest goals for what I wanted to be able to do. But being able to sort of design and then have something come out and like mess with it was a cool opportunity. And I'd kind of been talking myself out of getting a printer for a while. And so I use this as sort of that, and global pandemic gives you a little extra time indoors. Who knew?
Gives you some hobby time, huh?
Well, we're in California, so we don't have those wonderful Midwestern winters where all the great hobbying happens. But pandemic will do it, and yeah, it's been fantastic. It's we got that. We got a couple of resin machines. And our little farm has grown, and we're finishing up a couple of big orders that have really stretched us, but it feels a little like we're real, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, that's good. So business is good. You guys are, because I was a little concerned. Like, this isn't always like you mentioned, we're in the middle of a fresh pandemic, and if you don't have fresh, store bought is fine. but starting a business, maybe not the best time, but because I mean, I know my amount of games has dropped way down, but people are prepping their tables still, getting terrain made, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, we don't know any different. I think it would be great if there was even more business when we came on the outside of it. But I think Keegan and I, we both approach this. I don't think I'm speaking out of school and saying that. We both have day jobs. Obviously, we're not eating off of what we can produce out of our print farm. So the
Can
ability,
you print top ramen?
Yeah. No, but I was recently looking at a Bandai issued plastic cup of noodle model for totally unrelated reasons.
I heard something about that.
So we have been able to sort of get ourselves over the hump in terms of learning, which is slow and maddening and can be expensive depending upon the choices you make. I think we've made half of them bad and half of them good. So it's good, and business seems to be accelerating for us. But we did start from zero, so it's the old fastest growing company line, right?
Right. Well, that's awesome. How is it? So getting back to the main thing, we talked before we started recording here, and you guys are mentioning that you're doing a lot of like hybrid work with resin and FDM, but what is it that FDM brings to the table? Like when it's like, okay, we're going to do this in plastic rather than resin. What are those opportunities? What are the strengths and weaknesses?
Well, it's the strengths and weaknesses, really. Sorry, a little plastics joke there for you.
Okay. I was like,
Yeah, sorry.
That was either condescending or incredibly witty.
Yeah, no, I assure you it was neither. So I mean, it really, one of the things that I didn't expect to learn in playing with FDM printers and having the resin machines as well for comparison was how much of successful printing, especially going from either models you're downloading or models you're starting to do yourself, through a final print that has to have some mechanical properties to it, how much of that is really about learning the materials and learning like manufacturing realities. One of the things that's sort of a tyranny of these FDM printers is that you can edit everything, even if you're just in kind of the prosumer modes for most of the software that you use to do this stuff. Types of infill and types of shell thicknesses and all these other things that you can and eventually should mess with seem pretty daunting. And if you do the wrong one, a good model can turn out not that great. And if you do the really wrong one, a good model can turn out like a pile of spaghetti, and often does. And so I think that's I'd say learning about how the different materials work is a big part of it. But simply put, stuff that's really quite large, we put it in an FDM printer. Big pieces of terrain, things where really exceptionally fine details matter a little bit less, either because they'll be covered by by paint, or because the scale of the piece is just such that it'll be sort of fully appreciated, even though you may see a little bit of layering. We tend to print it at finer than. We're trying to sort of in trying to carve out what our stuff looks like and what like 6-up prints end up turning out like. We try and use good materials. We try and print at finer detail and finer layer height than your average shop. But even then, with an FDM printer, it's still not going to have the smoothness that you're used to with like an injection molded piece of plastic. That's just not how it works. So you can treat them and smooth them out, but they're going to come off the machine with layers.
That reminds me of the first episode we did on printing was Josh was talking about using like filler spray and sanding down and all that kind of stuff. Is that still the order of the day?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I would say the stuff that we print, we just finished a big a crane that I think it was Imperial Terrain, and beautiful model. But yeah, even in fine detail, you're gonna see layering on an FDM printer. You're gonna see some. there are people who sort of turn the dial up all the way to 11, use the tiniest nozzles and print at very, very, very short layer heights. And as long as your machine is sufficiently calibrated and sufficiently tight and isolated from vibrations when you're printing at those fine details, you can get very great looking. Oh yeah, well, it's not the earthquakes so much as the fires, and temperature is a factor too. So, I would say in practicality, yeah, if you're printing in any practical way, you're going to see some layers on FDM.
Well, one thing, just kind of following on that, Drake has done a ton of tuning into it, so that while we may not be at the turned it out to 11 with the tiniest nozzles, when we get pieces that are fully commissioned terrain pieces, where I'm doing post-production hobbying on them, I've been able to get pretty much the smooth effect that I want simply through just some extra priming instead of needing to go all the way to the filler primer and sanding methodology.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Which is
so
you can still see some little bits of it, but it's much better than most prints I'd get off of Etsy or something like that, and then have to go through the rigmarole of sanding and priming with that stuff.
Oh, that's a big compliment. Yeah, it's not layers, it's greebling, gentlemen.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I would say the other thing that I would like, the other big thing, like resin versus FDM, is in general, I think if you do a resin print the right way, with the right amount of infill and the right mechanical properties, in general, a resin print is going to be very glass-like, and if you drop it, it will shatter. There are tough resins and things like that that are fantastic, although I tend to feel like those they just feel like a regular resin print that isn't dry all the way, that hasn't sort of firmed up. I feel some of those also tend to take on fingerprints in kind of a strange way that you don't expect.
Oh, wow.
They can. And again, it depends on how you finish them. So I feel like if versus a well done FDM print, if you drop it, it may crack, or like a piece may come off of it. But we try and use materials and styles of infill and sort of a number of print perimeters such that most of our stuff, if you dropped it, it would bounce and it would survive. And that's kind of a personal thing, just because I'm clumsy. But I'd hate to have somebody who came to us and we worked on something great with them. They get it all finished, they get it all hobby, they drop it, and 27 pieces all in shards. So yeah, it all depends.
So you try to toddler proof it as much as you can.
Yeah, I prefer to think of it as adult male proof it.
Okay, that'll work too.
Well, yes, sort
not
of
many degrees of separation between those there.
Yeah, no.
But we do have plenty of toddlers between us, so we
true.
can use that as a baseline for
that's
the
true.
adult.
Yeah. We there's a fair amount of kids on this street, and a bunch of them are ours. So yeah.
Okay, right. So, but Drake, you do most of the modeling. You were saying you got into 3D modeling, and it sounds like you want to be using these printers for larger print jobs. Terrain is obviously an excellent use as opposed to like fine detail figures. How big is like the average piece? I know you're constrained to the limits of what the printer can actually do, or I guess you can actually piece it out in different parts based on how you set it up.
100%. I mean, you see people out there doing, full human size Iron Man, suits and things like that, all off an FDM printer, and it's the Johnny Cash song, gentlemen, one piece at a time. You can absolutely do that. I consider myself a novice modeler. As long as things I'm just now getting into sort of, doing more organic shapes, things that require skills that are more akin to sculpting as opposed to engineering modeling, which is where my comfort zone is. But you can do a lot with the skills you have. It's just you're doing a picture and you brushes or a knife, you can still make a picture with it. So I do most of that stuff, and then I would definitely sort of call myself our manufacturing engineer. That's just the part of this that gets me excited.
It's your company. You can come up with whatever title you want.
Yeah, functionally speaking, I mean, Keegan's the CEO and head of and global head of marketing, and I handle
the world famous. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I handle the behind the scenes magic. So
all right. So Keegan, you're there for the looks. Got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know we've gotten a little into some technicals, but let's take a step back, guys. New person wants to get into 3D printing. Mm-hmm. Where do you start? What do you look for? I mean, what are the bigger brands?
How quickly is the industry changing too?
Oh, geez,
generations of printers.
I wouldn't consider myself an expert on sort of printer generations, but I would say it seems to me that if you get a machine that is well supported, that has a good community of people using it, and that's kind of from one of, let's call it 2 or 3 brands that have carved out their space, then if you get this year's machine, you're not going to be sorry next year. It doesn't feel like they're advancing with quite that speed. The software is getting better faster, but that's all stuff that you can update. I think the entry level Creality machines, or we have Prusa in our shop, are good to great, and they'll certainly take you it's kind of like getting your first DSLR camera. Like, a real good photographer can win a Pulitzer Prize with that starter camera. Or you can move up to the real pro model later. And I think that's kind of where, like, say, the Prusa machine in our shop is. We're trying to make it sing. We're trying to do really amazing things with it. No, it doesn't have multiple extruders, or, we're not doing, although we do multi-material printing in our shop through use of another piece of equipment, but it doesn't, we're not going to be printing like, metal that's then going to be sintered into something else, but you can do a lot with it. And I think this year's printers, I would say just go for it. The other thing, like any good hobby, is I would figure out what you think it's going to cost to start out, and then save twice that much money. That way you're not like hating yourself every time you have to buy another spool of filament because you screwed something up, 600 times, which is what it will take.
Yeah. Drake, we went back and forth a little bit on Prusa versus a Creality or Ender. Can you talk to a little bit of the main key points that led us to land on a Prusa?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I have a cousin.
Is Prusa the brand? Just
Sorry.
Okay.
Prusa is the brand. They're made in the Czech Republic. The run by a guy named Joe Prusa, who puts his face on literally everything you receive from them. That guy is a good marketer, I got to tell you. But they're kind of all in with open source equipment. Creality, I think, is to some degree as well. They're very similar machines. They wouldn't like me saying that, but frankly, they are. They both have figured out good ways to make the machines nice and stiff, which is what you want. They both have, I would say, similar levels of accuracy. They both have, for the average person who's going to be printing things, they have similar capability. There is a trend in the industry right now to be obsessed with something that's called a Core XY machine, which basically just means that, like, it should be more stable and easier to use in some ways, but I will say not in ways that you're going to be impacted by in your first 3 years of owning a machine anyway. So it's really just a bunch of nerds like trying to one up each other.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
That
doesn't sound right at all. So I would say, Prusa I ended up sort of saying, hey, let's do one of these. Couple of reasons. One, I looked into it. They seem to have a really active user community. When I looked into like forums and whatever, like, their guides were very well written. They had built, pages on their site for, hey, here's a guide for doing this. There was a guide for almost everything. It was clear there was a lot of things you needed to know, but it was kind of like they had done a real job of thinking about how to onboard people to this hobby. In fact, I would say in some ways that was the real feature. The build experience, because we bought our printer disassembled. Excuse me. The build experience was probably one of the best build experiences I've had in, I'd say even in the last 10 years. It was difficult. but it was incredibly clear. Everything was there. Everything was well labeled. They even send you a bag of gummy bears so that your blood sugar doesn't get low. And in the instructions, they tell you how many bears to eat.
Check gummy bears.
Exactly. They ship them. They ship them with the thing and say, okay, you get 3 bears because this was, that's how hard this last step was, and this is how long we think it should have taken you. And so they try
really okay. I didn't get that on my Creality machines. But we'll talk about my Creality machines in a moment.
like I said, there's a certain amount of branding that goes into this too, right? But yeah.
So build difficulty on a level from IKEA to Lego.
I don't really understand the spread there, but
me either. I'm just I'm grasping at straws here, guys. Come on, help me relate it.
It is
maybe like building a PC.
I'm in a little harder. I would say it's an 8 and 8. If you're somebody who's never, if you've built a PC, for instance, if you're that guy, you can do this. There will be a little bit more sort of mechanical thought involved than there is in putting your PC together, but the electronic work will be easier, right? It's blue wire onto these 2 pins, and just kind of, because you're assembling a little computer plus a robot essentially that doesn't move, or hopefully it moves.
Well, it does move,
not
but
anywhere
not on
off the bench.
Yeah.
So not a full droid. Okay.
No.
Exactly. So it's ultimately the thing that broke it for us was, I have a cousin who's like an actual pro maker. He runs all the maker spaces for a very big government contractor, and he said, we've got a little bit of everything here, but we've got 27 Prusas, and they're just great. So that's what did it for us, and we haven't been sorry.
Yeah, cool. So like I mentioned earlier, I picked up my first machine was a Creality. My second one was also Creality too, but I'm in about my second year of doing personal printing. I have to agree, the Creality setup is very similar. Creality is a Chinese company, and they do have a lot of communities online and a lot of YouTube videos too. You can just put the model number of your printer in and say how to do X, Y, and Z, and you'll usually find a YouTube video about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty well supported out there.
They're very similar, I think, in terms of that. And if I were to buy a first printer, honestly, if we second, third, fourth, fifth, probably those. Until you step up into printers that are costing, let's say $5,000 plus, you can do a lot with those machines. And oftentimes the most efficient thing to do as you're expanding past your capacity is just get a second machine, even a smaller one, because because of how FDM printing works, you get a lot more printer space and speed if you're printing 2 things at once versus you have one bed that can handle one job at a time.
Exactly. So,
But yeah. So I think the other thing does your Creality machine do auto bed leveling? Does it have the sort of magnetic proximity sensor and set itself up every time?
For clarity, my first machine I bought was an Ender 3 Pro, which in my research most people recommended the Ender 3 as your entry-level first printer to buy if you're doing this on the hobby level.
How long ago was that?
This was, a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow. So in the ancient times.
In the times before the COVID. Yes. The Ender 3 does not have auto bed leveling. It has, underneath the bed, there are 4 wheels, basically, that you spin on the 4 corners to balance it. And you have to do the old-fashioned trick of putting a piece of paper down, lowering the nozzle to the paper, and then sliding it to see how much friction is between the nozzle and the bed.
No kidding.
Yeah,
that sounds sketchy as hell.
No, once you get the concept and the idea down,
man. I mean,
I mean, there are aftermarket things you can buy. I mean, the Ender 3, if you're a hobbyist, I have to vouch for the Ender 3. It's a great starter machine because there's so many modifications, add-ons, tweaks, and things you even just print on the printer itself to add and build the machine out.
That's what you've been using to make all the foofara for the Star Tours table, right?
Yes.
All the little statuettes and luggage carts and whatnot.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, for terrain purposes, it's great. Even for scatter terrain, smaller barrels and boxes and whatnot, that's great. My second machine I got, which I famously talked about previously, they got yeeted across my porch by FedEx. Ring doorbells, FedEx. Come on, you're always being watched. Was the Corelity CR6, which they had a Kickstarter for, so I jumped on that while it was a good price. This one does have auto bed leveling, where it's actually a pressure lever in the nozzle.
Oh, gotcha.
So it literally goes and taps the nozzle into 16 places on the bed, and uses the amount of. By the time it reaches the bed at a certain amount of pressure, it says, "Okay, I'm here," and it will zero itself off of that.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's the Prusa uses a non-contact version. I think the other thing I would say, if there's a comparative, or if there's a feature I like about the Prusa, it's the non-contact bed leveling. Although I will say you certainly could do just as good of a job if you really spent the time, with the thumb wheel version. I will say on top of that, even with the auto bed leveling, if you're really trying to get ultra crispy prints, I spend time printing sort of these very thin test models that then I measure with a caliper to check if our layer height is correct back to front, side to side, in essentially in 9 positions. And then even with the auto bed leveling, over time things get off a little bit. The facility's warmer, the facility's cooler. And so I would say every couple of weeks I'll print another quick, test level, and then, just sort of adjust it. You adjust it in software. So it says, back, front, left, right. And so you sort of relatively do it and get things real flat. The other thing that I really totally changed my 3D printing experience, was printing with a spring steel bed that has like a kind of a wrinkle coated powder coat on it. Prusa lets you choose that as a default now, and prints release instantly. There is no prying, there is no twisting, there is no glue. There's no, and I'm talking about for basic materials like PET or PLA or anything. But anything up past PET G, you just sort of print it, you pull the sheet off, you sort of twist the sheet a little bit, and the print flies off. And the sheet is clean and ready to print again. I mean, if you want, you can hit it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, but it's unbelievably quick and clean. And that was a real game changer for me. And for terrain stuff, it's totally fine to have that texture on the bottom. Essentially, it's a very fine texture, but it is visible.
Yeah, but it'll be on the bottom, so it's not
not
visible
at
when
all.
it's on the table. But for all the non 3D printing familiar people out there,
it's like putting Pam on a cooking sheet.
Actually, with 3D printing, you want the obvious. You want it to stick to your bed.
Damn. All right. You don't invert that.
Yeah. So the bed, of course, is the.
Come off.
Oh, well, you want it to come off at a certain point.
Okay.
But the bed, of course, is the flat plate at the bottom of the printer where the printer builds the model off of. And there's a couple different styles of beds out there. The most common ones that I've seen with starter printers or entry-level printers, of course, are those kind of build-tack magnetic sheets. So it's basically like a giant refrigerator magnet that's got a textured surface. Mm-hmm. And once your print is done, you're able to lift them because it's the plate below it is just magnetic, so it sticks to it. Lift it off, kind of peel the magnetic off the bottom of the model. I mentioned earlier, I upgraded my 2 printers to glass plates, which have been a world of difference in getting that bed level.
Yep.
Really?
Glass is incredibly flat, and that's you kind of don't think about how flat or unflat like other things that seem flat to your eye are, but there is a real difference. I was watching YouTube videos recently of this Japanese woodworker. Don't judge me for this story. This Japanese woodworker who's doing amazing work, and I go, how is he possibly doing this? And then it cuts to a shot later, and he's literally sanding everything with sandpaper that's attached to a giant sheet of glass in his workshop. And I'm like, oh, okay, you have to be that guy. Otherwise, you can't make things that look this nice unless you're doing that. Great.
Got to cheat for it, but
So
you guys were talking about a lot about the communities and things like that, and definitely I think Legion itself has benefited from just when it came into the market with this kind of surge in technology and hobbyists and things like that. Key, you were talking a little bit like you've got working relationships with some of the other shops that do either 3D modeling or terrain or things like that. How have you found working and kind of moving around those communities?
Yeah, it's I think you hit the nail on the head. Legion had a great timing to come out because there was this surge. We some of the big names, of course, with Imperial Terrain for the terrain. You got Skullforge for a lot of the custom models, and a number of the others that have done some great work in both modeling and printing stuff. I met Dave from Imperial Terrain at that first LVO, had great conversations with him, and as we were starting to get into this, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I want to, we're looking at doing commission terrain where we print it and do full hobbies on it. I wanted to I wanted to see what he was comfortable with around the right way to do that. Use his terrain and then build something on it to build a story and the real detailed looks into it. And it was a great conversation. We worked out the right kind of arrangements, and we've been continuing to work and partner with him in a few different ways.
Nice.
So using that gives a good kind of library of things. Also with the large community of modelers and creators for various things. If someone has bought a STL and is just looking to get it printed, we can function as a high quality print shop and just get something out that works for either if you want to hobby it yourself or if you want us to take a pass at it.
So as we get closer to LVO, hopefully that it's coming up this 2021, and I'm panicking because I'm running out of time to print my new table.
Oh, you can outsource
I can outsource that to you guys. I'm gonna make a note here so I can keep that in my back pocket for
yeah.
No, I mean that accounts for a good amount of our commission work, and obviously we're like, you have to keep it in the spirit of community in the sense that like somebody, we want to make sure somebody's done right by the designer, that that everyone has the rights to do what they're doing with the thing, that nobody has any problem with it. I mean, good vibes all the way. But sure. It's essentially I think what you're renting is our printer space, machine time, but also I'd say a little bit of our expertise in getting it to look real nice. The example I was talking to you guys about before we started was just a recent piece for a guy who's a bit of a madman. I think he's down in Southern California. He's High Ground Terrain on Instagram, I think. But he had these sort of like, I think they were Dave's. They were Kessel sort of pumps, and he sort of sent them to me and was like, "Hey, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want with them." And I was like, "Okay." I'd set them up for the FDM machine. I was getting them ready to go, and I looked at his Instagram. And he's actually doing a lot with like strip lighting, and he seems to sort of really have a strong appreciation for kind of the additional realness and aesthetic that light and light color can bring to a table. That really vibed with me. I mean, I grew up with some model train stuff, and I really liked that. So I said, hey, what about if we take these models, we do the pumps themselves in like a sort of a toxic translucent green resin that if you light from the inside will look like they're full of some horrible solvent they're using on Kessel. And then you can paint the outside, you can paint areas of the outside so that only the tanks can glow. And then they also had this one of them had this fantastic long hose. It was probably 10 inches long maybe, and it had these sort of big S bends in it, and then it swept up vertically to connect to the top level of one of these pumps. No way you could have done it on resin, but it would have been just a pain in the butt, and it would have taken 5 separate pieces and all kinds of stuff. So I adjusted the model slightly so that I could slice that off, because it was meant to be printed as one big piece. I sliced it off. I made an interlocking piece on both models so that once the two sides were printed, they could just press together and they would stay. I mean, you could glue them, but they would stay. And then I printed the hose on the FDM machine because the mechanical properties of the materials we use would work way better for a hose, because that would have been very brittle in resin. And then the main pumps were resin, so they had like crazy good detail. I'm super excited for when he finishes hobbying those up, because I think they're going to look really neat with the lights inside them.
Dude, that sounds awesome.
But bringing that together and saying like, okay, that's where I've been really astounded by how much sort of learning about materials properties is a part of 3D printing and designing. Like, how is this going to work when you finally get the thing in your hands and have it sort of, when it's squeezed out of plastic, basically.
Nice. So you talked about prepping the models for print. We talked a little bit about slicing last episode, and the principles are pretty much the same on FDM for resin. But what slicing software do you guys use? Because I use Cura at home myself.
Yeah. So I use. So Prusa has a flavor of slicer that they use. Again, it's open source, but what they do is, in addition to making almost everything orange, which is their corporate color, they also load in materials profiles. And so I use that for slicing FDM. It's got the same set of, again, it's kind of like Coke or Pepsi in the sense that it's more or less the same. It kind of drinks the same. The exact way you do things is
hold on. What? You've been sniffing those resin fumes.
Sorry. Yeah, neither of you guys are from Atlanta, right? You're allowed to say Coke and Pepsi are the same literally everywhere else in the country. So we use Prusa Slicer. I use Prusa Slicer, but I will say probably half the time I'm taking a model into Fusion. I'm taking an STL into Fusion. I'm editing and re-exporting it to try and sort of make something a little bit better or tighter or more printable. And if you get into 3D printing, you'll understand what a model that looks printable and a model that doesn't look printable looks like.
We brought that up a little bit last episode.
Yeah, you guys covered that last time with the video game models.
With the video game models, people who just dump Battlefront not a good idea.
Then I'll dump it back out of Fusion and slice it up, and then the nice thing is, if you don't do any modeling at all, the slicing programs also often have a lot of kind of tools for like cutting a model in half or doing some very basic editing to the model so that you can kind of get what you want out of it. I'd say the big difference in slicing between resin and FDM is you just have to conceive of how it's going to be built. The resin machines in general I don't know of any that aren't like this. The build plate, the thing that the surface sort of dips down into the resin and then lifts up, and you're building a model that essentially will be like hanging from the ceiling of the machine as it's building. And so you have to think about like tensional forces and if you can support it in a hanging sense. And then it's exactly the opposite with an FDM machine. You're laying things down flat, and so you have to support sort of bulbous things from underneath as opposed to how you do them in resin. So it's just a sort of the exact same hobby, but flipping it on its head.
A stalactite versus a stalagmite kind of thing? Okay.
Precisely it. You can make similar shapes.
Yeah.
You can make... Exactly. Nothing like SAT words for the common man.
And one other note on the community aspect, I think a great example of like the community and pushing ourselves is what the work we did with you guys coming up with for the quarterly reward turn counter.
Man, you're jumping ahead to the next segment. That's fantastic. Yeah. So wait, that's right. We did. We contacted you guys.
Yeah.
And actually, if you could walk us through the process. So I sent you a picture of something that I had, and I was like, "Hey, can you guys do this?" And at a price we could afford to, not break our Patreon bank to send out as a reward.
That's always the way, isn't it? Yeah, I will say I was a little testy with Keegan about this one because not because it was
really
not because of the constraints. I mean, a good engineer enjoys constraints. But that it was coming in literally like I think like a week after we had brought a new kid home, and so I was like, oh god, this is like it's multi-material, and it physically doesn't exist. Like we have to conjure this thing into existence, and it was that, and I was a little nervous about my modeling skills, all the kinds of anxiety. No, but so once I'd gone through the stages of grief, I sat down and was like, okay, as it turns out, if you have a new baby in the house, you spend a lot of time in the middle of the night waiting to feed them. And so I just happened to spend that time sitting in Fusion, messing with models of stuff for you guys. I would say,
hey, well, you're welcome then.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was great. you guys had an idea. I think Keegan and I had actually sort of talked about something like this as a way. I think one of the things we really like to do is take something in the game that is ubiquitous and that is kind of everyone uses the default version of, and just come up with a way to elevate it a little bit.
In this case, I realized it didn't say this is the turn counter, round counter.
The round counter,
you guys are working on. Right.
Yeah. So we, it's everybody uses the same one, just kind of like the mines. Like everybody just uses those little quarter pieces of cardboard. We kind of took the idea. I brought it into Fusion, and I kind of made a basic shape. I kind of wanted, and I tried to sort of add a little bit of our signature to it. It's got a recessed bottom. It has kind of a signature chamfer for us around the outside edge. So it's got a little bit of an angle that makes it kind of feel nice in the hand. And then we went through a couple of different versions. Again, the nice thing about the 3D printer is it was conceived of, I think, as a prototyping machine. So I have a stack of them in my garage. I'd love to send you guys a picture of, I think, probably 10 or 12 alts that not only were designed but printed. And again, it's a combination of not just trying to get it to be the right size and feel right, but also work and have the right thicknesses. And sometimes you just can't tell if 30 millimeters or 36 millimeters are is that the right diameter for this thing, So you just got to print it and hold it. And with the FDM printer, you can. And so why wouldn't you? So we did that. We had a version that had like this nice knob on top that I really liked. It was knurled and all this other. But Keegan was like, "No, come on, man." I was like, "It did feel a little Game of Life to me, but also it was so nice." Yeah. So if somebody out there buys something from us in the future and it has a nice knurled knob on top, you'll know where that came from.
Nice.
But yeah, so then ultimately what we did is we have a machine in our shop. That's it's called a canvas. It's made by a company called Mosaic, and it's called it's called the Palette. It's called a Palette 2S is what we have, but the machine is a palette. Essentially, what it does is it takes up to 4 different strands of 3D printing filament. That's the plastic that goes into the squeezy hot end, and it will. According to pre-programmed lengths and print positions, will cut it up and merge it so that it is one long piece of filament that has many colors in it. Sort of like if you were going to knit a picture into something, and instead of switching yarns, you had one piece of yarn that was the right color at exactly the right place. That's precisely what it's doing, but in 3 dimensions. So we used that plus. We actually took that machine is actually very cool. It costs about as much as a 3D printer on its own. So I would say make that your second Christmas gift after convincing your significant other the 3D printer is a good idea. But that machine comes with some really good basic ways to they use kind of a painting sort of metaphor for how you can use it to color things, and they have some web software that lets you do that. Or you can do what we did for your piece, which is every single color on your piece is a separate modeled body, because then you can color those bodies sort of contiguously and say this entire red area is just red versus, hey, like kind of this general vicinity is red. Software, you figure out if it should be 1 millimeter thick or 3 millimeters thick or whatever. We wanted sort of that uniformity and that kind of finished look a little bit more. And so all the colors on your turn counter are separately modeled bodies. So you're not holding a turn counter there. You're holding about 40 separate bodies that have been printed together. And then not to mention the top cap and the bottom nut, which hold the thing together. So.
Yeah. No, when I first got them, I thought you had a dual or triple extruder, because I'm like, how the heck did they get 3 colors into one model?
Yeah, we routinely do it's 4 color printing. I really like it too, because it does add a step. But if you cross the bridge and you can do even a little bit of modeling, it's not terrible. And it also makes it possible for me to like make toys that look more like toys for my daughter. Nice. Hey, this has 4 colors in it. That's a normal thing. This airplane looks like an airplane.
That's how
toys for children?
That's how you convince the wife to put the money towards it.
You can do anything with these things, right?
We'll save money.
Yeah.
Toys for children and toys for adults.
Exactly.
Well, guys, the round counters turned out fantastic, and I absolutely love them. I can't wait. We're going to be sending them out. I think we're going to start sending them out this week. So awesome. This is, your last chance. If you want to get on the Patreon, get one of these round counters. They'll be coming out here real soon. But gentlemen, man, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk to us about this stuff. Keegan, you want to hit us with your socials? Where can people find 6UP?
Yeah, we're of course 6upsupply.com is our storefront, and I think we're coming on Etsy too now. Is that Drake?
Yeah, I got some stuff to do, but yeah, we're gonna have a matching Etsy store. Just search 6UP on Etsy, and we'll start to come up, and then same deal on Instagram. That's kind of where we're active on socials, I'd say. Yeah, we build physical stuff. We like to share pictures of it. We also love sharing pictures of people who are using our stuff to make neat things. And I'd say if I could leave all the hobbyists out there with one piece of advice, I would say you're the beginning of your 3D printing FDM journey is going to be fraught and frustrating, and you're never going to know precisely what about your machine you have screwed up. So to the degree that you can, to the degree that you can, I would say
just pay somebody else to do it. Got it.
Yeah. Well, no. You got, we're going to get better at this faster than you will. So we're still going to have something to sell you, but go out and do fun stuff. I would say spend a little bit more money and get nice extrudable materials. Buy nicer filament. Don't cheap out on your filament. I think half the time you have a print that fails, it'll be because you did something wrong. But if you add another half of the time because you don't know if your cheap filament is causing you problems, you will rage quit the hobby. And I will say I think Prusa manufactures their own filament in-house. We use it a lot, not exclusively, but we use it a lot. We use PETG for most of our models. It's a little more expensive, but I find it fails a lot less. And so ultimately net, it's less expensive, which is how you can justify spending the money on nicer materials. But if you're having to diagnose your I don't know what rating this podcast is, but if you're having to diagnose your filament, it's gonna madden you. So just buy some decent stuff, and then that'll be settled, because there will be plenty of other variables for you to obsess over.
Awesome.
And for anyone who's like me instead and doesn't have the patience for all that hobbyist stuff, we are happy to work with you to figure out what kind of terrain you want, or even build some great fully hobbied up pieces for you as well. For
sure. Bring a vision, bring models, don't bring models, whatever you want. And we are delighted to talk with you about what you want the table to look like at the end. I love it when people tell me this is the vision I have.
Yeah.
And how can you make this easier for me to achieve? And that's what we do. We'll
Awesome.
talk to you. We'll share pictures. We'll get pictures. We'll work through it, and hopefully we'll find something that you're just going to be super stoked to have on your table.
I bet. Well, guys, thanks again for everything, but a lot of information to digest there. Thank you again. We will see you next time, Outriders.
This concludes the current episode of the Legion Outriders podcast. You may cultivate a tactical advantage by observing the Outriders on Facebook or Twitter at Legion Outriders. Wisdom advocates subscribing to the podcast. Acting otherwise is reckless.